All right. Good morning, everyone. I don't know who's going to join me this Sunday morning. You know that my normal time, my usual time for doing these science live streams is Saturday morning. And yeah, I decided to get some exercise yesterday and just have some personal time. And Saturday's a good morning to go out and go out in a certain section of town and walk around. There are people out there, trains going by. It's beautiful. And then I wanted to go and journal a little bit. But thank you to those of you who gave me those likes. Those are always very much appreciated. To this morning, oh, it looks like I got another one. This morning, we're going to do a little bit of science history and what impact that science history has had on culture and also on our community in particular. All right. Let me see who's here. Professor Black Ops, thank you for being here. All right. Let me share this over on my original Big Discussions 76 channel in case anyone over there wants to come and partake in this. A lot of you have heard of Margaret Sanger before. Before coming to YouTube, I was not as familiar with her, but her legacy very much impacts us for reasons I will discuss. Passport OG, yep, chemists, you're a chemist. Chemistry is a science that pretty much every scientist, whether you're a pharmacologist or a medical doctor or a chemical engineer, an engineer of any kind, everybody has to take chemistry. It's a gateway course, and chemistry and physics turn a lot of students back from going to medical school. A lot of students start off saying, "Oh, I want to go to medical school. I want to go to medical school. I want to be a medical doctor." But when they have to take chemistry and organic chemistry and physics, all right, let me make this announcement. Let's see. Have you guys recovered from Tuesday night? Let's see. Abortion and eugenics. Hey guys, thanks for being here. Please smash that like button if you haven't. Let me switch this back. I'm going to play my my intro with Cheryl Pons from Ditech, and then we're going to get this party started. I'm going to do some reading, guys. Hopefully, it won't take too long. But this is a bit of science history. And to those of you out there who would say, "Why are you doing this video on this white woman?" In my family, and I'm going to see my family in a couple of weeks for Turkey Day. It's going to be an eventful. It's probably going to be a pretty lively Thanksgiving dinner because of what just happened on Tuesday. But one of the things, my family, my family is skeptical of information from our European cousins, and even if it's valuable information, they're skeptical of that. So I'm sure some people will look at this and say, well, why is he covering this? Why is he covering that? Well, this particular white woman, okay, her legacy, her work has had a significant impact on our people in this country. And based upon the events of the decision 2024, I thought it was worth taking a look back at who this woman is and her legacy and what her life's work was. Okay. So I'll see you on the other side of the intro, guys, and we're going to learn about Margaret Sanger, abortions, and eugenics.
So, Anwar, I see you have the periodic tables on your chest.
Mm-hmm.
So what's that all about? Why are you walking around with a chemistry chart on your chest?
Well, Cheryl, so this channel is a STEM channel. So when I was conceiving of it and figuring out how to grow it, I figured I should have some T-shirts to go with it. So the periodic table is critical to most of the scientific fields.
Welcome to Big Discussions 76, Science and Technology. Science and technology are all around us, all of the time, and there are always science and technology stories to tell. All right, guys, welcome back to Big Discussions 76, Science and Technology. This morning, I'm going to talk about Margaret Sanger, abortion, and eugenics. I'm not going to give a long, drawn-out discussion over the biology, reproductive biology, the X chromosome, the XX gender, the XY gender, mitosis, meiosis, gametes, how those all come together. You guys are smart guys. You guys know that. You guys know that probably cold turkey. But what I will say, let me load this slide up for you guys. What I will say, let's see. Let me show this one. I don't know if antinatalists, I have two slides in there, if it's hyphenated. But what I will say is that reproduction is a very, very big deal. Okay, so humans are a sexual species, okay? And for the species and for bloodlines to go on, there needs to be reproduction, okay, between a man and a woman right now. And for society to go on, for jobs to get done, for the government to generate tax revenues, there needs to be reproduction between men and women, okay? And so the question is, then what happens if you don't have reproduction between men and women, or if you have decreased reproduction between men and women? Well, then you're headed towards a crisis. Okay, so for those of you who are out there wondering, why is Dr. Dunbar talking about abortion and reproductive rights and Margaret Sanger? Well, this has implications for all of us because there are quite a few people, just like with just like with Tuesday night, there are a lot of people looking around and wondering what happened. Why did the presidential election turn out the way that it did? I'm not going to get into all that, but there are a lot of people who don't know why there are fewer and fewer children being had in this country and in Western countries. Part of that, I think, part of that answer lies in the Mouse Utopia experiments. Shout out to the nameless protagonist and the master teacher, Nicole Ali. Part of that involves how society has been socially re-engineered and some of our new cultural norms and mores, social mores, and our mores. I always get those mixed up. And so I talked to you guys, this is back in my library. I talked to you guys months ago about Paul Ehrlich. Okay, Paul Ehrlich wrote The Population Bomb back in the 60s and the 70s. There was a concern that there would be too many humans on the planet. And I think a lot of our global leaders, they talk about this. When you see them meeting at the G7 and the World Economic Forum and all those things, they're talking about this. Where are populations growing? Are there too many humans? are we going to have enough resources to support everybody? And you best believe it's factoring into some of the decisions that they make. There are groups called antinatalists who think that having children and bringing children into the world is cruel and evil and that it shouldn't be done. Okay. And as I was researching all this and making content on all this, I realized that this is what we're experiencing today is an offshoot or maybe even an unintended consequences of removing religion from society or society becoming more secular. Because one of the basic teachings and tenets of at least Christianity is to be fruitful and multiply. Well, if you take that away and you move towards more of a capitalist, individualist paradigm, then it all becomes about what you want individually, not a family unit and not a species and a bloodline going on. So there are a lot of things, just like the result from Tuesday night, there are a lot of things that people just don't see. And there are a lot of things that people just don't understand about what's happening now in the world. They don't understand the what and the why. I first learned about Paul Ehrlich at my HBCU, John C. Smith University. Shout out to Marcus Williams. You always mention Michigan, but you never mention John C. Smith University in your content. I first learned about Paul Ehrlich and ecology and population control back then, but I didn't understand the gravity of all of it. Okay, so I'm at 10:30. That's my opening monologue. So what does Margaret Sanger have to do about all this? Well, Margaret Sanger, her name in the YouTube streets, because I didn't start hearing about her name. We didn't talk about that. We didn't talk about her in my undergraduate studies, just Paul Ehrlich. Her name was synonymous with abortion, okay? And the number of abortions in the Black communities and the inner cities, her name kept coming up, all right? And so I gradually started to gather that, okay, she had something to do with modern birth control and the number of Planned Parenthood clinics in the inner cities. And so you guys know that leading up to Decision 2024, we were slapped in the head over and over again with women's reproductive rights. That was the key issue that Madam Vice President Harris ran on. Some would say that because she focused so much on that led to her losing the election, but we were slapped over towards the end over and over and over and over again in the head regarding female reproductive rights. Okay, so where did this whole thing come from? Well, let's learn a little bit about Margaret Sanger. And a lot of people around your Thanksgiving table, at your HBCU, at your church, they don't know who this is or what her legacy is and how it has impacted our community. So before I jump into this, there's a B1 sector. Those of you who are in my chat, you know that there's a pro-Black B1 sector. Well, one of the content creators, Jason Black, he did say, I think leading up to Decision 2024, that if not for all the abortions, we would have had 80 million, approximately at least 80 million more Black people in this country right now. And that would have obviously affected the voter base and the demographics. So think about that. We would have had more of us in this country. That's more people, more brothers and sisters, more aunts and uncles, more cousins, more nieces and nephews, just more people. So keep that in mind. Was all of this premeditated and engineered, or is this all happenstance? All right, Margaret Sanger, this innocent little lady from the early 20th century. This is from PBS. Okay, there's Margaret right there. Margaret Sanger devoted her life to legalizing birth control and making it universally available for women. Let me read that again, this time without hesitating. Margaret Sanger devoted her life to legalizing birth control and making it universally available for women. And again, this is significant because over the last 3 months, we were bombarded with this messaging about this. Okay. And towards the end, the question was, why aren't you men supporting this? We need more men. This is part of your duty to women. This is part of your duty to your daughters, your sisters, your nieces and nephews, and your grandchildren. You have to ensure this right. Okay. That's the significance of this. Born in 1879, Sanger came of age during the heyday of the Comstock Act, a federal statute that criminalized contraceptives. Margaret Sanger believed that the only way to change the law was to break it. Starting in the 1910s, Sanger actively challenged federal and state Comstock laws to bring birth control information and contraceptive devices to women. Her fervent ambition was to find the perfect contraceptive to relieve women from the horrible strain of repeated unwanted pregnancies. Okay, think about that. The horrible strain of repeated unwanted pregnancies. So if you think about it, back in the day, 100 years ago, there was no birth control. Marriage was the model. And this was before Title IX and, women going into the workforce and women's suffrage. So a woman's job at that time was to have children. And many of our older families, the families that gave rise to us, there were lots of children being born. And I guess, they had no way to control how many children were coming. But at that time, children were seen as blessings. Okay. That's not always the case today. So I just wanted to give some context there. You guys keep letting me know what you think there in the chat. If anyone wants to make a donation to this channel, my Cash and my PayPal are here. All right. Tragedy leads to commitment. Now, this is her motivation. This was the turning point in her life. Sanger's commitment to birth control sprung from personal tragedy. One of 11 children born to a working class Irish Catholic family in Corning, New York at age 19, Margaret watched her mother die of tuberculosis, just 50 years old. Her mother had wasted away from the strain of 11 childbirths and 7 miscarriages. Facing her father over her mother's coffin, Margaret lashed out, "You caused this. Mother is dead from having too many children." Let me read that again. The second half. Just 50 years old, her mother had wasted away from the strain of 11 births and 7 miscarriages. Facing her father over her mother's coffin, Margaret lashed out, "You caused this. Mother is dead from having too many children." Okay, let's stop there. So 11 births, 11 births and 7 miscarriages. So her mother was working. That calls into question, should her father have did her father want that many children? Was it just the fact that there was no birth control at that time? Was there an obligation to have that many children? Guys, let me know in the chat, because I'm Gen X. I think most of you guys are Gen X and lower, but for you Gen Xers, I know my grandmother, she had 8. Okay, should I say this online? I grew up with 8. There were 8. To my knowledge, there were 8. And then there were a few. Later, we found out there were a few more. Okay, so that was normal. And then post the 1970s, there were fewer. I mean, you had some women who were having, 3 and 4 children, but the norm became to have 2 and then 1. And then now children are seen for a lot of younger people, men and women, as hindrances. But how many aunts and uncles do you guys have? How many children did your grandparents have? You guys just let me know there in the chat, and I'll keep going. Okay. Uh-oh, Lovely Trust is here. Thank you for stopping through, Lovely Trust. Tragedy. Okay, so I already read that. Nurses botched abortions. Okay, determined to escape her mother's fate, Sanger fled Corning to attend nursing school in the Catskills. Eventually, she found work in New York City as a visiting nurse on the Lower East Side. It was there that Sanger saw her personal tragedy writ large in the lives of poor immigrant women. Lacking effective contraceptives, many women, when faced with another unwanted pregnancy, resorted to $5 back alley abortions. It was after these botched abortions that Sanger was usually called in to care for the women. After experiencing many women's trauma and suffering, Sanger began to shift her attention from nursing to the need for better contraceptives. Anger turns to action. Sanger began to devote more and more of her time to her mission. In 1914, she coined the term birth control and soon began to provide women with information and contraceptives. Indicted in 1915 for sending diaphragms through the mail and arrested in 1916 for opening the first birth control clinic in the country, Sanger would not be deterred. In 1921, she founded the American Birth Control League, the precursor to the Planned Parenthood Federation, and spent her next 3 decades campaigning to bring safe and effective birth control into the American mainstream. Okay, so remember, childbirth used to be normal, and I guess it was, even in married families, even in nuclear families, there were quote unquote unwanted pregnancies. I'm going to read some of these. Willia 3R says, my grandma and my dad's side had 9 good births. Might be miscarriages there as well. Yeah, a lot of it depends on how your family history is shared. They don't share everything. That generation, they didn't share everything. The Black boomers, they didn't share everything. So we're in the dark about a lot of things. So there were miscarriages. There were aunts and uncles and children that were given up for adoption. There were a whole lot of things going on. Okay. In addition to children not knowing who the real fathers were. Okay. And children being sired by other men, by affairs and things. Yeah, there was a lot. Will.ir 3R says both grandmothers lived well past 70. Slick Rick said, I'm a 70s Gen Xer. My grandmother on my mother's side had 9 children, with my mother being the youngest. She passed away in her early 40s when my mother was 3 years old. He's saluting Trust. UFO Kamikaze said, I grew up one of 7 kids. UFO Kamikaze, how many kids did your grandmother have? How many aunts and uncles do you have on either side? Money Motion says, I'm a millennial and I have 9 aunts and uncles. Okay. Yep. That sounds about right. Willia 3R says, my family's genetics are pretty strong. Sanger just came from a weak genetic line, but to hear those white a-holes call it Black folks are weak genetically. All right. I'm gonna read a few more. Professor Black Ops says, my aunt had 12 kids. Wow. Okay. All right. Let's go back. Let me finish this up. Still more to do. But by the 1950s, although she had won many legal victories, Sanger was far from content. After 40 years of fighting to help women control their fertility, Sanger was extremely frustrated with the limited birth control options available to women since the 1842 invention of the diaphragm in Europe and the introduction of the first full-length rubber condom in the United States in 1869. There have been no new advances in contraceptive methods. Sanger had championed the diaphragm, but after promoting it for decades, she knew it was still the least popular birth control method in America. The diaphragm was highly effective, but it was expensive, awkward, and most women were too embarrassed to use it. Please smash that like button if you haven't. Andre says, I have too many aunts and uncles to count on both sides, but I have 11 siblings though. Andre, can you give me a guesstimate on your aunts and uncles? Because I'm trying to see what the trend is, because we know that it's like an inverted pyramid now. It's going like this. So you had the baby boom, and now it's kind of trending downwards. So Andre, if you have a guesstimate for us, but thank you for sharing that you have 11. Okay, so Andre, here's a question. Since you said this, I have too many aunts and uncles to count on both sides, but I have 11 siblings though. If you feel like sharing your 11 siblings, are they all by the same parents, or did your parents split? And do you have half brothers and sisters? You don't have to answer that if you don't want to. All right. Here we go. Worried about population growth. But Sanger, now in her 70s and in poor health, was not ready to give up. She had been dreaming of a magic pill for contraception since 1912. She was no longer just concerned about women suffering from unwanted pregnancies, now a firm believer in the theory of population control. She was also worried about the potential toll of unchecked population growth on the world's limited natural resources. So there's a linking right there to people like Malthus and Paul Ehrlich. Okay. So right around the time, well, before we were all here as Gen Xers, there was a concern that there would be too many people on the planet. Okay. And I'm thinking about the Steve Ballmer video I showed on my original channel. There are 350 million people, ballpark, in the United States, and we are 4% of the total world population. I think we're at about 8 billion right now. And I don't think on our current trajectory, we're not going to double. And at some point, it's predicted to start sliding in the other direction, downwards. But people were worried about too many people being on the planet back in the 60s and the 70s. So start to think about some of the changing in the social norms, the messaging from Hollywood, some of the things that have started entering the curriculum in school. Are all of these things connected? That's a rhetorical question for you guys. All right, a magic pill. Tired of waiting for science or industry to turn its attention to the problem, Margaret Sanger set out on a mission. She sought someone to realize her vision of a contraceptive pill as easy to take as an aspirin. She wanted a pill that could provide women with cheap, safe, effective, and female-controlled contraception. Her search ended in 1951 when she met Gregory Pincus, a medical expert in human reproduction who was willing to take on the project. Soon after, she found a sponsor for the research, international harvester heiress Catherine McCormick. Their collaboration will lead to the FDA approval of Enovid, the first oral contraceptive, in 1960. With the advent of the pill, Sanger accomplished her lifelong goal of bringing safe and effective contraception to the masses. Finally, a dream achieved. Not only did Sanger live to see the realization of her magic pill, but 4 years later, at the age of 81, Sanger witnessed the undoing of the Comstock laws. In the 1965 Supreme Court decision, or the Supreme Court case, Griswold versus Connecticut, the court ruled that the private use of contraceptives was a constitutional right. When Sanger passed away a year later, after more than half a century of fighting for the right of women to control their own fertility, she died knowing she had won the battle. Okay, so the Supreme Court case, Griswold versus Connecticut, the court ruled that the private use of contraceptives was a constitutional right. The reason I had to read that again about the case is I'm trying to reconcile that with what's been going on with the Dobbs decision being overturned. I'm trying to think, a woman's private use of oral contraceptives, is that the same thing as the federal government supporting it and paying for it? You guys let me know what you think there in the chat. I'm going to be thinking about this as the day goes on. Okay, so that's part of her history, but we all know that there are different parts of history. And so what's the other part of Margaret Sanger's history and legacy that I started hearing about here on the YouTube streets? And what are things that we as a community, quote unquote, or the community that we have left, what are things that we need to think about when these arguments over reproductive rights come up, and their origins? I'm going to read some comments here. Thank you for your participation. It's Sunday. Why aren't you guys in church? Why aren't you guys at Sunday service? That's a joke. That's a joke. All right. Will 3R says, I'm seeing if Andre answered my question here. He didn't. Lovely Trust says, Wayman 3, has the 3 been in AM the entire time? Is it? Okay, I don't know what that means, Toya. For sure. Now that's a heavy lift. Willia 3R says, my apologies for my potty mouth. It seems the older I get, the more disgusted I get by Western propaganda versus what is actually going on. Yeah, I think we all lose our inhibitions as we progress in years. Willia 3R. Yep, he said, when I started the account, it's actually from a college email name that was assigned to me long ago. Oh, okay, that you're talking about your name. Doesn't mean anything in particular. Okay, the Equalizer, Thanos. Okay, Resurrect Mints says, Bill Gates Sr. Was clicked with her too. That's why the Microsoft dude is trying his best with his potions. Okay, yeah, all these things are interconnected. Andre says, I have at least 10 plus aunts, uncles on each side, and two sisters, and 2 full sisters. The rest are half siblings. Okay. Pastor says, let her private insurance cover it. He says, what you know, Doc. Passport OG says, you change the woman's biological imperative, you create a new human being. Yeah. So just briefly, so it started with one birth control pill, Enovid, but it's exploded into a whole smorgasbord of birth control methods and pills. And at some point, this started being linked with a woman's reproductive health and women's health. And I know one of my former significant others, I'll just say this and I'll keep it vague, I know that she took an oral contraceptive to regulate her cycle. So some women have very, very aggressive and debilitating menstrual cycles. And one former significant other, I remember she took it to quote unquote control her cycle. But what's also interesting with the hormonal birth control methods is there's been work done looking at whether or not it changes a woman's preference. So there's some data that suggests that a woman's mate preference is one way when she's off birth control and versus when she's on it, because you're affecting her hormonal balance and homeostasis. So a woman, let's see, before she gets married, she may be attracted to a certain man. when she's on birth control, but then when she comes off and her and that man are having children, since her natural hormonal cycle is back, she, even though she's married, she may develop a preference or a desire for a different man than the one she married. Okay, there's work out there on that. I'm not going to get into it extensively now, but there are a lot of dynamics to this one little thing. Okay, what's the other side of Margaret Sanger's legacy and her work? The first time I actually ever heard of eugenics was Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. And as a matter of fact, let's get the textbook vocabulary definition for eugenics before we jump into this. A lot of people, especially around our Thanksgiving tables, don't know this. They think, we're just living in this racist society and things just happen the way they happen. And, you should just vote one party because that's the party that's down for you. Eugenics, the study of how to arrange reproduction within a human population to increase the occurrence of heritable characteristics regarded as desirable. Let me start again. The study of how to arrange reproduction within a human population to increase the occurrence of heritable characteristics regarded as desirable. Developed largely by Sir Francis Galton as a method of improving the human race, eugenics was increasingly discredited as unscientific and racially biased during the 20th century, especially after the adoption of its doctrines by the Nazis in order to justify their treatment of Jews, disabled people, and other minority groups. Okay, but I've heard stories that even upper class blacks, the black bourgeoisie, the boule, the Jack and Jill crowd, they actually indulge in some of this as well, which is why, in part, they all associate together, and in part why they're exclusive in terms of who comes into their communities and their families. They want to maintain certain bloodlines and certain characteristics and certain skin hues. So this is not just restricted to Nazis and old monarchies. This happens in our modern society as well. All right. Guys, all these guys and gal, Trust was there. All of these are below in the description box in case you want to keep copies for yourself. This one, I found this one on USA Today. It said it's called "Remove Statues of Margaret Sanger, Planned Parenthood Founder Tied to Eugenics and Racism." Okay, so again, think back to she's one of the founders of modern Planned Parenthood. Okay, and it seems that there are, I don't go looking for this stuff when I drive through the inner city, but apparently Planned Parenthood has a firm imprint or a firm footprint in many inner city communities where we grew up and where many of our relatives still live. That's why this is significant. All right, so this is about removing statues. You guys know that there was a huge push to remove statues of nefarious characters from history about 5 years ago. Well, that's what this article is about. So I'm going to skip through the front and I'm going to cut to the chase, to the meat and the potatoes. Okay, so this subtitle reads Sanger's Planned Parenthood Mission. In a 1939 letter to Dr. C.J. Gamble, Sanger urged him to get over his reluctance to hire a full-time Negro physician, as the colored Negroes can get closer to their own members and more or less lay their cards on the table, which means their ignorance, superstitions, and doubt. Okay. Like the abortion lobby today, Sanger urged Dr. Gamble to enlist the help, oh boy, of the spiritual leaders to justify their deadly work, writing, "We do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members." Guys, I'm going to read that paragraph again because that's powerful. Okay. Like the abortion lobby today, Sanger urged Dr. Gamble to enlist the help of spiritual leaders to justify their deadly work, writing, "We do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members." And that spirit of racism continues today, as more than 300 former and current employees of Planned Parenthood said recently in an open letter noting a toxic environment. Okay. What, for those of you out there, I have 19 watching, in this election, in election 2024 and decision 2024, what was something that we saw unfolding in Black churches? What was something we saw unfolding in Black churches? What was a controversial aspect of Madam Vice President Harris's candidacy? What did she get into hot water for? Well, she got into hot water for a number of things, but what did she get into hot water for in particular at that rally in Wisconsin? Anybody? Waliah 3R says, these Black church leaders always seem to be sellouts to the white power structure. That's probably why the Nation of Islam, and Islam in particular, was able to gain a foothold in the Black community. Passport OG says craziness. Slick Rick says Sanger's 1939 Negro Project comes from the Black intellectuals of Du Bois. Those are Du Bois quotes she's repeating. Let's see. Trust says bullying. Waliah 3R says Black Christianity sells out too much to the system. Yeah, so at that rally in the swing state of Wisconsin, which she lost, two younger white gentlemen yelled out, "Jesus is Lord." And that's when she infamously said, "You're at the wrong rally. You need to go to the rally down the street." Okay, and that's when Pastor Jamal Bryant came out and circled his wagons around her. But it was a dismissive response to Jesus as Lord and to the pro-life people. So while she's there was a bit of a contradiction there, okay, that she was using the Black church to help her candidacy, but she dismissed two individuals who believe in Jesus Christ and who were pro-life, and she was able. Well, I won't single her out, but in some of the Black churches, there's a marrying of the Black church, of the gospels in those churches, with the pro-choice agenda. Okay, which is very, very controversial, because the question is, how can you believe in Jesus Christ and have a pro-choice agenda? Okay, and some of you on my original channel, you saw that on X. Delano Squires called out a pastor here in Northern Virginia about his pro-choice stance. And in that picture, that pastor had on a shirt that said, "I'm with her," and then it says something to the effect of, "It's a woman's right to choose what happens with her body." Okay, he posted a picture of that pastor. Okay, And I know who that pastor is. Okay, I'll just say it right here. It's Sunday morning. That's the pastor at my church. Okay, that's the pastor at my church. If you guys go look that up, I won't show it here, but well, I'll just leave that there. But what we saw from her letter right there is that strategically they were thinking ahead and saying, okay, how can we use the Black church and the pastors at these churches to push this agenda? We're almost done, guys and gal. Quote unquote, Planned Parenthood was founded by a racist white woman. That is a part of history that cannot be changed, they observed, writing that the pattern of systemic racism, pay inequity, and lack of upward mobility for Black staff continues. There's Margaret right there, a little further along in her life. Cultural icon Kanye West has made headlines with his recent statement on Planned Parenthood abortion vendors, which he said have been placed inside cities by white supremacists to do the devil's work. He's right about the locations of the businesses. The vast majority of abortion vendors have set up shop in minority neighborhoods, which can be seen in the scarce statistics available at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Though they are only 13% of the female population, African Americans made up 38% of all abortions tracked in 2016. In the 1970s, when the Supreme Court's Roe versus Wade decision legalized abortion, polling showed that Blacks were significantly less likely to favor abortion than whites. Yet in New York City, more Black babies are aborted than born alive each year. And the abortion industry think tank, the Guttmaker Institute, notes that the abortion rate for Black women is almost 5 times that for white women. It would seem that Sanger's vision of ending Black lives has come to pass, though, to be accurate, she also endorsed ending Chinese preborn life as well. Among those who advocate for the removal of statues, signs, and traces of racist ancestors, there is no balancing of good and bad deeds. It would be hypocritical to say that the racist attitudes and eugenics policy preferences of Sanger should be ignored because it was a tactic to advance birth control that some consider a social good, the position of famed feminist Gloria Steinem. Let's see. Okay, we're at the end here. And then I'm going to show something else brief and then I'll stop. Let me read some of your comments. Salchi, yep, that was her quote. You're at the wrong rally. That's Madam Vice President Harris. AB says, I agree with her. They were at the wrong rally. Passport OG says Raphael Warnock is the pastor of Ebenezer Baptist and supports all of the Democrats' agenda. Imagine that. Yeah, there are a lot of contradictions, and people. I think a lot of people don't see the big picture, the overarching picture, and how all of these things fit together. AB says Jamal Bryant equals blasphemer. Will.i.a 3R says Kamala Harris showed her whole behind with that dumb comment, and it also revealed once again how much of a sellout to Babylon the Black church is. Black church equals Babylon fallen. The Builder's Table says, how more proof do you all need? She couldn't read the room. Go Professor, thank you for stopping through. Trust says, not to mention being tone deaf regarding Blackness. Let's see. Will.i.a 3R says, a defiler as well. Add that part. All right, let me finish this up, guys. I have 2 more small things to share, and then I'll probably drop the link. It's Sunday morning. We can have church here ourselves. The Church of Dr. Dunbar, the Church of Scientology of Dr. Dunbar. All right. By the way, guys, how are you guys doing in your personal lives in terms of your family in the aftermath of Decision 2024? I haven't really spoke to any relatives yet. I'm probably going to call my mother today just to see how she's doing. Plus, she's proofreading my book, and I need to see how far she's gotten. But I'm going to call her later on to say hi. But have you guys spoken to any of your relatives? You don't have to answer that if you don't want to. Okay, eugenics. Birth control to eliminate the quote-unquote unfit. But consider Sanger's own words in an article entitled "A Better Race Through Birth Control." She wrote, "Given birth control, the unfit will voluntarily eliminate their kind." Wow. Let me read that again. But consider Sanger's own words in an article titled "A Better Race Through Birth Control." She wrote, "Given birth control, the unfit will voluntarily eliminate their own kind." Birth control does not mean contraceptive. Birth control does not mean contraception indiscriminately practiced, Sanger wrote. It means the release and cultivation of the better elements of our society. Just this week, Planned Parenthood of Greater New York announced it will remove Sanger's name from its Manhattan abortion vendor location because of her harmful connections to the eugenics movement. Why stop there? Sanger is honored in the Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery and at Margaret Sanger Square in Manhattan. And a Margaret Sanger statue stands in the Old South Meeting House in Boston, which ironically enough is on the Freedom Trail commemorating the Revolutionary War. How a woman who advocated for the selective breeding of her fellow citizens came to be memorialized with those who built a country is hard to understand and a mistake easy to address. This is the ending here. While there are other places celebrating her, these three are a good place to start. They should not be removed through mob violence, but rather through the use of democratic tools, as a Students for Life group at the University of Missouri did in successfully petitioning for posters of Sanger to be removed. And then finally, Students for Life of America is launching an SOS Strikeout Sanger campaign, calling on pro-life people nationwide to demand the removal of Sanger's statues and symbols, which represent a racist who actively targeted minority communities because she did not value their lives. The founder of Planned Parenthood does not represent our American ideals, and her images and honors should be pulled down to gather dust in history's closet. Okay, that was written in that was 2020. That was 4 years ago. Okay, I'm going to read some comments here, and then two more things. I'll drop the link for just a little bit, and then I'm have to close this down. Let's see. Slick Rick, this is an interesting point because this is one of the things that's debated. And shout out to Dr. Patrick Murphy, a classmate at the University of Michigan. When I first started getting exposure, I didn't start to really understand things in politics until I got to the University of Michigan. But I remember me and Dr. Murphy, we were talking, and he said, one of the major disagreements or argument points in this abortion discussion is when life actually starts. Is it when sperm joins egg, or is it when that fetus attaches to the wall of the uterus? When does life actually start? Folks don't agree on when that is. Passport OG says Black children deletion DEI. Builders Table Professor Go Professor says peace everyone. Indeed, Allah is all in all. Good morning, and may Allah continue to bless you and your family. Go Professor. Okay, Slick Rick says New York City is a large percentage of is where a large percentage of Black abortions take place. Most of these people are immigrants. Same with Florida. Yeah, I'd be curious to see what the rates were. New York City gets a lot of spotlight for this, but I'd be curious to see what it's like for the rest of the country. Salchi says, Doc, you are attempting to encourage Black folks to read and research the origin. He says, sir, how dare you, BGS voice? Yeah, that's, I think we'd all be a lot better off if people researched these things, because especially during an election cycle, the politicians are playing on our emotions. And that certainly happened with women's reproductive rights. We're not going back. Vote, go into your, don't tell your husband who you're voting for. Yeah, it's important to understand how these things came to be, what were their original intentions, and why were all of these things put into place. Okay, give me a second here, everyone. I'm going to read this article. All of this stuff is below in the description box in case you guys want to read it. This one comes from the Texas Tribune. Okay, this is from 2 years ago. This was just after the Dobbs decision was overturned. This is entitled Facing Higher Teen Pregnancy and Maternal Mortality Rates, Black Women Will Largely Bear the Brunt of Abortion Limits. So this is bringing in reproductive health with overturning the Dobbs decision and not just the abortion of children. So this is tying in the reproductive health, quote unquote. All right, I'm going to skip down and read just a little bit of this. Then I want to show something from Pew Research. This is an interesting graph here. This was written in Texas. This subtitle reads, let me just get that just right. Abortion clinics in states where abortion will still be legal. So this reads, here are the abortion providing clinics in states neighboring Texas where abortions are not banned. Texas and most of its neighboring states have passed trigger laws that will set up abortion bans now that the United States Supreme Court has overturned Roe versus Wade. Okay, so part of the argument was that women's reproductive rights have been banned. And then the retort or the rebuttal is they were not banned. They've just been sent to the states. Okay, they've been removed from the purview of the federal government. So this map shows that abortions were banned in Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. But those women can still travel to Kansas, Colorado, and neighboring New Mexico to get those procedures done, if that's what they want. Okay. And then, of course, the other retort is just use a condom, don't have sex. Okay, be more careful with your womb. These are the arguments surrounding this. All right. So I'm going to read just a little bit of this, I promise. But, the article said that Black women are going to suffer more severe health outcomes due to the overturning of Dobbs. So I'm going to read just a little bit of this. I have to acknowledge Shonda. Shonda has entered the chat. She says, good morning, Big Discussion 76. My paternal grandmother had 15 children. My maternal grandmother had 11. 3 she lost back to back in early childhood, and 8 lived through my adulthood. My great grandmother had 14 kids. Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Shonda. Yeah, I think that's the general trend for all of us. As Gen Xers, our grandmothers still had quite a few. And then their predecessors had quite a few, but post the 1970s, in our current modern world, that number per woman has dwindled down for numerous factors. Okay, Black women face greater health risks. In a In addition to Texas, 25 other states are certain or likely to ban abortion now that Roe versus Wade has been overturned, according to the Gut Maker Institute. Okay, that came up in the Margaret Sanger links that I just read, the Gut Maker Institute. Blunt said it won't be long in the coming weeks and months before the U.S. begins to see the long-term effects of those bans on Black women. Okay, I'm going to read these 4 paragraphs and then I'm going to stop this one. Black women in the United States are more likely to die from pregnancy or childbirth than women in any other race group, according to a 2018 report from the National Partnership for Women and Families. Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to experience a pregnancy-related death than white women, and the risk spans income and education levels. Black women are also more likely than other racial groups to experience maternal health complications throughout the course of their pregnancies, and hospitals that predominantly serve Black communities provide lower quality maternal care, performing worse than others on 12 out of 15 birth outcomes, including elective deliveries, non-elective cesarean births, and maternal mortality, according to the report. About 75% of Black women give birth at hospitals that predominantly serve Black patients. There's a variety of reasons why these statistics are higher for Black women. Blunt said Black women often lack access to proper prenatal care. If you're Black with low income and living in rural areas, you just don't have access. In addition, Black women in the United States are more likely than their white counterparts to be obese, which can increase the risk of gestational diabetes, hypertension, preeclampsia, and other pregnancy complications, Blunt said. Weight gained and kept after birth, along with limited leisure time physical activity, may especially contribute to obesity among Black women, according to a study by the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute. Black women also appear to be particularly susceptible to cultural, psychosocial, and environmental factors that can promote weight gain. All right, guys. Since we started it, just this last section. Because of high chronic stress and race trauma and fear, the majority of Black women produce 15% more cortisol, a stress hormone, than white women, which in turn raises the risk of pregnancy complications, according to the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute. Okay, so guys, keep that in the back of your mind. Because of high chronic stress and race-based trauma and fear, then a question is, where does that chronic stress and race-based trauma and fear, where does that come from? Is that something community related? Is that something relating to relationships? Is that something related to broken families? Where's that coming from? Those are important questions. But there certainly is some endocrinology involved regarding cortisol. And so literally the combination of poor health, lack of income, lack of access, and the stress of being Black in this country causes premature mortality, Blunt said. And when Black women are ready to deliver, they are often devalued and dismissed in medical rooms during and after the delivery, Blunt said. Blunt mentioned the experience of tennis star Serena Williams had shortly after the birth of her daughter, Alexis Olympia. Williams said in a 2018 interview with Vogue that she had extreme shortness of breath after her daughter's cesarean birth and was concerned because of her history of pulmonary embolisms, a condition in which one or more arteries in the lungs becomes blocked by a blood clot. She told a nurse that she needed a CT scan and IV heparin right away, but her requests were dismissed because the nurse thought her medications were making her feel confused. All right, you guys can read that entire thing. It's in the description box. I'm going to show one more link here from Pew Research. I'm going to sprint through this and hop through to the main points, and then I will be done with my presentation phase. Thank you for all of your comments there. This is from Pew Research. There's one thing in particular I want to focus on, but we're going to just hop through this. This says what the data says about abortion in the United States. Okay, I'm going to jump here. How many abortions are there in the United States each year? Okay. An exact answer is hard to come by. The CDC, and that name keeps coming up, the Guttmacher Institute. The Guttmacher Institute have each tried to measure this around half a century, but they use different methods and publish different figures. The last year for which the CDC reported a yearly national total is 2021. It found that there were 625,978 abortions in the District of Columbia and the 46 states with available data that year from up from the 597,355 in those states in DC in 2020. The corresponding figure for 2019 was 607,720. So guys, think about that. Guys and gals, think about that. So the total US population is about 350 million. 607,000. That's approximately 1/5 or 1/6 of the total US population. Okay, that's significant. 1/5 or 1/6. Okay, so yeah, that will have a huge impact on whether or not you're able to replace the population and whether or not you're able to have workers in the coming years to do the jobs that the country needs. And that's part of what the immigration thing was all about. So that's a lot of abortions. All right. Let's read this figure here. Okay. The last year for which the Guttmacher Institute, the name keeps coming up, reported a yearly national total was 2020. That's right before COVID. It said there were 930,160 abortions that year in all 50 states and the District of Columbia, compared to 916,460 in 2019. Okay, so now if you're talking 900,000 abortions, and the total US population is roughly 360 million, that's 1/4. That's 1/4 of the US population that's being aborted right there. Those are your future workers. That's your population potentially replacing itself. Okay, so I'm going to skip down. This graph is interesting. It says a look at the changing number of legal abortions in the United States since the 1970s. So this is your x-axis is the years starting at 1970. That blue line is the Guttmacher Institute. So let's see. In 1985, according to their data, it peaked out. No, in 1990. I was I was just entering high school. According to this figure, abortions peaked out in 1990 at 1.6 million. Okay. This powder blue UNC Tar Heels colored line shows that in 1990, abortions topped out at 1.4 million. And in 1996, I was in college, there were 1.2 million. And then it looks like the numbers trended downwards by about a third to 2020. So the Gutmaker Institute shows that there were 900,000 abortions in 2020 and 622,000 abortions. The CDC reported 622,000 abortions in 2020. So guys, this is very significant in terms of what's going on now. So I'm going to scroll down to this last piece that I want to show because they highlighted something here. This link is below. YouTube might post this one out because it looks like it has one of those long URLs. But let's see. This paragraph here, it's highlighted. And it says, looking at abortion rates. So you have to, when you're talking about these things, when you're talking about statistics, Salchi knows this, when you're talking about statistics, when you're having political discussions, you have to parse out and differentiate between total number and rates. Okay, whether it's taxes, whether it's abortions, whether it's crime, incarceration, you have to think about rates. So you're thinking about, I think, the speed of something versus the total. So the magnitude of something within a specific group versus the total, because people will always come back and say, well, the total number was larger in this group. Okay, but the rate of it might be larger in other groups. So this reads, looking at abortion rates among the ages 15 to 44, there were 28.6 abortions per 100,000. I'm sorry, 100,000. Let me start over. Looking at abortion rates among those ages 15 to 44, there were 28.6 abortions per 1,000 non-Hispanic Black women in 2021. 12.3 abortions per 1,000 Hispanic women, 6.4 abortions per 1,000 non-Hispanic white women, and 9.2 abortions per 1,000 women of other races. The CDC reported from the same 31 states, DC and New York City. So there's a whole section there, but they highlighted this distinction between the ethnic groups. I'm going to read that one more time, and then I will stop presenting. And so looking at abortion rates among those ages 15 to 44, there were 28.6 abortions per 1,000 non-Hispanic Black women in 2021. So our community led in abortions. And then as a scientist, the next question you want to ask is why? What's leading to that? 12.3 abortions per 1,000 Hispanic women. 6.4 abortions per 1,000 non-Hispanic white women, and 9.2 abortions per 1,000 women of other races. The CDC reported from those same 31 states, DC and New York. All right, everyone, that's what I wanted to present for this morning. I am going to drop the link in case anyone wants to come up. Guys, I'm not monetized over here, but please protect the content creator. But this is significant for what just happened. It's significant on a number of fronts, but this is an issue we were hit with during this election cycle. We were hit with this over and over and over again down the stretch of the election. The question is why? Another question is, if you're going to have a society going forward, do you want to encourage this? Okay. And also, well, we talked about the history of Planned Parenthood, but based upon why this was started, is this something you want to keep going? These are rhetorical questions here. Okay. And also, as a community, is this something we want to keep supporting? Now, the interesting thing is one of the backlashes you're seeing in the aftermath of decision in 2024 is you're seeing a lot of backlash in terms of, why didn't you all support this? For whoever voted for the orange man or the orange man's policies, how could you not support this? And going down the stretch of decision 2024, you could see Governor Tim Walz's tweet. Okay, well, I want to talk to the men. Okay, men, we have to support this. And in many of the Black churches, it was, we have to support this. How could you not support this? So I've probably gotten myself in hot water from people who are pro this, but this is something to think about, something to keep in mind over the Thanksgiving table. Engage with your relatives and your whomever, if you will. I'm going to drop the link right now. If anyone wants to, before I do, if anyone wants to make a donation to the channel, my information is here. I'm not monetized over here. YouTube, this is for educational purposes only. We're not telling people what to do or what to think, though I am encouraging people to think. I'm going to pin this to the chat. That is pinned to the chat. You're welcome to come up. Just keep it PG. I appreciate the support over here. I'm going to wrench everybody up. I'm not monetized, but I appreciate the people who come and hang out here with me regularly. So Willia 3R, I just gave you a wrench. Normally the tech, Slick Rick, I'm going to give you a wrench. The tech is the most popular over here, but occasionally I will do science history and also take a look at what effect science has on our culture and society at large, because oftentimes science, the things we create as scientists, the pharmaceutical companies, the chemical companies, they're creating things to either better society or they're creating things to impact society in any number of ways. So Margaret Sanger clearly had an intention for birth control and contraception. I think Salchi was up first. So Salchi, what say you? Welcome.
Good morning. We are at the Church of the Dunbar.
Won't he do it?
Yeah.
Won't he do it?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
It was a good stream, man. It's, to me, it's telling that it's more important. Well, to many of them, it was more important at marketing, abortion than it was at educating women about health. I mean, it shouldn't surprise me, but it's just interesting to watch that people in this information age still don't learn. With all the access and privileges that we have in this country, people they're just lazy. And generally speaking, we get the results that we get because critical mass of people consistently make poor decisions that those of us who are more disciplined and, more responsible and accountable, we pay for. So, that's just the state that we're in. And I don't even respond to people, or especially to women, who even try to shame men into making poor decisions or bailing them out for their poor decisions. You're in America. You are an adult. Point blank, period. And, when you look around, when you look at the numbers in terms of, you can go to Planned Parenthood. They got all their figures there. You can see who has the most, in just raw numbers, abortions. And then you can see who has the highest rates of abortion. But what's very telling about abortion is the fact that the vast majority of women who have abortions, these are women who can afford to have an abortion. They're working class women. But when you see when they market, abortion and women's rights, notice they always market these poor Black young girls. But that they aren't the ones who are even at a critical mass at, utilizing abortion. Which just shows me how intellectually lazy people are. So that's why, I see why, this marketing stuff, it works on a critical mass of people, but I see why people voted the way they voted. It is nobody's business who anyone voted for, to be quite frank. But if you don't have people, if you don't have a new generation coming in, or if you're below, a replacement rates, that just shows you how short-minded you are. How will you continue to have this privileged life, especially when you get old, without the young folks producing and putting into the system? That's how short-minded they are. With all the college degrees that they have, they can't seem to put two and two together. Interesting.
Well, Salchi, there was also a breakdown somewhere. I do believe in what Dr. Thomas Sowell called consequential knowledge. I know everybody doesn't like Dr. Sowell. I know VGS doesn't like him, but I think he says some valuable things. I do believe in the concept of consequential knowledge for which there are consequences if you don't have it. And the ball was dropped somewhere in terms of explaining how the circle of life works, and even how countries and societies continue going on.
I would agree, but the only reason why I will say this, with the advent of the internet and now this, a cell phone, and virtually I can't say everyone, but the vast majority of people who have cell phones, they have what, we would consider PDAs, so they have the access in their hands. They're walking with the access to the information in their hands. They have more access than Bill Clinton had when he was president. So that's why I say what I say. I say, hey, that's fine if, that's what you want to do, but there are consequences. And we're in the age of information. And being in this, privileged environment called the United States of America, every year, because of technology, excuses decrease because we have access. We have libraries. Now you can get free internet at your local coffee shop, at McDonald's, at Burger King. These places where a lot of these people who, eat, have poor diets. That's where they go. So that's why I say what I say. It's like, how many chances can you give people? And why even bail out people who continuously make poor decisions? Why? There needs to be natural consequences, just like in real life, in nature. There are natural consequences. That's how I see it, personally. You want to do it? Fine, you pay for it. You bear you bear, the fruits of your labor. It's pretty simple.
Okay, I want to thank Go Professor for the generous Cash App. Thank you, Go Professor. Before I give it to AB, so Salchi, I want to go back to something you said.
Pastor was before me.
Okay, we'll go to Pastor first, but I want to, before I hand it to him. So Sachi, so can you talk about again the distinction between women paying for it versus not? You said something about that?
Yeah.
Go.
I think it was. Geez, time is flying. It wasn't. Was it? I think it was 2023. Rom Wills had we had a discussion, and he had me, do research on this, and come to find out, and again, you can go on Planned Parenthood, and this is where I got it from. When I say vast, the vast majority of the women who have abortions, they are working class women. So these are women who they can literally afford it. We're not talking about, how they complain about healthcare. No. We're talking about women who make enough money, who can pay cash. But again, who is the face of abortion when they're marketing, when they're trying to sell this stuff? Poor, helpless, supposedly uneducated, young Black girls. They're not even a critical mass of abortions. They aren't. I mean, it's a fact. It's not opinion. And then the other crazy part about abortion is, again, because it is a privilege, it is a luxury. It is not a need. It's a luxury outside of, incest, rape, and medical complications. So when you factor those, when you actually deduct those three factors, those three factors are only less than 3% of abortion. And I'm being extremely liberal with the number. So let's be nice to say it's 3%. 97% of abortions, that was a woman's choice. And then the vast majority of those 97% of the women themselves, they can afford to have abortions. That's a fact. You can go on Planned Parenthood. It is right there. Planned Parenthood have all the statistics. And I also encourage you to look at the financial statement and the board of directors. That's what I do. I don't listen. I don't, especially people outside of my inner circle. I watch what people do. And the further apart from what they do from what they say, the less serious I take them. But I will consistently believe what they do. I mean, to me, it's just very simple. That's why I don't get caught up in what, a lot of marketing. I just watch what people do. And I watch where they spend their money. I watch who they surround themselves with. And then when it comes to these corporations or especially these nonprofits, who's on the board of directors? And it tells you, it's very telling.
Okay, I'm going to pass it to Pastor. Before I do, I did take a quick look at their annual report, and I will say their board of directors, I only see one man here. He's the treasurer. Which is very interesting. But I honestly haven't stopped and taken a look around their site yet. But after this discussion, Salchi, you've inspired me to take a look at the Planned Parenthood site. But let me get out of the way here. By the way, everybody, Pastor, 1 second. Abortions, despite what you're hearing about the Dobbs decision, they're still taking place. And data that I quoted, AB Media, you were on the panel with me when I showed that. There were quite a few in the early part of this year. So,
yes,
I'm saying this to say that what we were told was the right has been taken away.
It hasn't.
They're still having them, and they're still having lots of them.
Oh, but I'm sorry. The last thing I forgot to say is, and the vast majority of abortions are in pill form. That's the other thing. So
that is true.
Yep. Go ahead.
So, Dr. Dunbar, thanks for having me up. Thanks for having me up, brother. But what I would like to say is this: what ended up happening is a hardship became a medical issue. Margaret Sanger, her mother had 11 children 7 miscarriages. She blames her mother's demise on body strain from childbirth. Margaret Sanger ended up getting married to William Sanger and ended up having 3 kids of her own, but she definitely wanted to control childbirth because she believed that too many children would literally drain a woman to death. That's technically what she believed. And too many children from the wrong economic background would also drive a woman to her demise. That's the reason why she only pushed for upper echelon or middle class children, which is that's the reason why a lot of world leaders ended up using her. It's a reason why it's a reason why her thought process made it into government. Put it that way. It's really difficult, and I agree with you. They're still happening. This was really a Southern issue, if you really want to think about it. I think that's the reason why Kamala, not just scientifically but politically, wasn't able to get that vote, and she ran so heavy on it because there were states that went red that women can still have those procedures. You know what I'm saying? And there were in the South is still hashing out how we feel about that procedure. Me personally, I don't support it. But when you look at it medically and politically, feeding the underclass when you can't afford the underclass is hard. And the economic hardships on them. And you say that all women can afford their abortions. I don't know if that's true. I think that they can afford government subsidized abortions. I don't think they can afford I didn't afford the procedure if it didn't have an insurance or some third party helping it. And
I didn't say all women can afford it. I said the vast majority of the women who do have abortions, they are middle class. They are solidly middle class women who are working.
And I tend to disagree that there's a bunch because middle class women can actually afford the birth control. And see that's the reason why they were having this issue about attacking, because it's bigger than just abortions. They're also talking about IVF, which is also a procedure, and that's a very scientific procedure if you want to be matter of fact about it. And they're also having an argument about that too. And the only people that can afford IVF are middle class to
upper middle class. It's
Americans,
actually,
yes.
That's a whole different procedure. But you can
go on. It is, but the argument is in the same family because it's the same people.
You can go on. You can go on Planned Parenthood. All the stats are there, man, because they monitor all this stuff. I promise you, the vast majority of women who have abortions, I'm not talking about IVF, abortion, point blank, period, they can afford it. The numbers are there. It's consistent for years. It's consistent.
I agree with Shonda. I do agree with her medically and scientifically. I agree with her, but Margaret Sanger was making an argument that I don't know if you can medically prove. She because what she was saying is her mother had 11 kids, 7 miscarriages. That is what took her life. Shonda's probably right. There were probably some in her mother. They were poor, so it was probably the poor conditions and everything else that actually led to her demise. But that's not how Margaret Sanger took it, and that's the reason why it ended up becoming a federal thing rather than a state by state thing. And I think it should be a state by state thing, not a federal thing. And I'll end there. Thanks, AB, for letting me speak first.
Okay, I just want to thank Shonda. Shonda, you're from the medical sector, so thank you for sharing this background to this. AB?
Oh, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's interesting how this I didn't know she went through this with her mother, and it explains a whole lot about her path to Margaret Sanger, the path she took. That her mother had a bunch of miscarriages, and she ended up blaming that on the father. Does it? And I hate to say this, but doesn't that sound familiar? Considering what we deal with in our community, who they usually blame it on?
Jermaine?
Yeah. Yes.
So was that
And
Todd? You blaming it on Todd? Patrick?
but and it goes to the mindset that she put in the community when she one of the I guess had this eugenics ward. She and I hate to say it, but she smartly went to the preachers. And I hate to tell y'all this, that residue is still there today. I'm probably
Well,
not going. I'm probably not going to church today. I'm not saying I'm giving up church, but I want them to cool off.
well, AB, that goes back to my theory
Mhm.
regarding politics, that a lot of the black churches are tools of control.
Yes.
That they're places
Yep.
where traditionally a lot of our people have gathered, and pastors, church boards, clergymen, they have a lot of power because those people, the people in those congregations, if they're not well read, like some of us, well, see, I don't want to self gloss, but if those people aren't well read,
Mm-hmm.
if they're not asking questions, if they're not doing the research, then they will take what that pastor says as the gospel. No pun intended.
Yes.
So that, but it is scary that she would intentionally target pastors to get this message across.
It worked in the black church because the black church dealt with the black churches where a lot of black people congregated. And the black church also had high class blacks that ran the church, middle class blacks that kept it going. They also had a bunch of low class blacks, and the reason why the black church took it in is from the AME Zion Church perspective, is because literally they believed that poverty was killing children and women. So they took, look, we need to plan out how we have kids because poor people are not, poor women especially, and their children are dying because of poverty. So the black churches took it in because it was a faith, it was a belief, it touched to the spirit of reproduction, of childbearing. And so the black pastors took it in, and they were telling poor women not to have children. Because in the AME Zion Church, they were not telling middle class and high class blacks not to have children. Not in the AME Zion Church. Historically, they weren't. We wouldn't have maintained our percentages if they were, but they were definitely telling poor women not to have children. They even had that North Carolina, I think North Carolina was even sterilizing poor black women genetically, politically, through the church and socially, because they couldn't. It was about getting rid of poverty. This is all about getting rid of poverty.
Yeah. And I just made a post on Facebook. I don't want to, because I can tell you where some of them are going. Some of them are questioning people's faith because they voted for a certain candidate. And my response to that is, I don't want to hear from y'all because y'all voted for probably the most pro-abortion candidate I've ever seen in my lifetime. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. I've never remember a candidate promoting abortion the way a certain candidate has.
So, Pastor, I want to ask you a question. So this, assuming this is true, I'm going to post this again. This doesn't sound like poverty. This sounds like birth control to eliminate the unfit. So the unfit could be kids with Down syndrome. The unfit could be kids with cystic fibrosis, or it could be racially seeing other ethnic groups as being unfit. Now, I thank you for introducing that comment about social class and trying to eliminate poverty. But this, to me, when you say eliminating the unfit, that means you're targeting certain individuals.
Absolutely.
Yes, and certain individuals end up leading a life of they live a impoverished life. A child with cystic fibrosis, a child with the lower end of autism, where they're not an Asperger's child, where they are on a higher functioning. these people live a very impoverished lives, and the argument would be that they create a drain on society. This is the reason why world leaders around the time did definitely use her ideology, because you do create, I hate to say this, but handicapped people do create a drag on our society. We love them, forgive me, God, for saying that, but they do create a drag and impoverish our society.
Well, I would say, okay, so more so back then, but once the 70s came and we got off the gold standard and basically we're on a credit or debt model, that pretty much is null and void, because, well, at least in America, because I mean we have way more than enough. The only difference is, unfortunately, most people just aren't educated on how the system really works. So so a lot of people, well, excuse me, too many people abuse the system that would actually, support those who actually need these programs that they were actually, created for. So they would be taken care of. So I would consider them an expense. I mean, in this debt model that we're in, it would be more than enough to cover them. But again, people who are able but unwilling are abusing the system. So a lot of people who do actually need certain services are not getting them, or aren't getting enough of them, unfortunately.
We've been joined by Gold Professor, and I want to throw another rhetorical question out there. And this is not to pile on. Someone made a comment here. So in that article from Texas regarding the health complications that a lot of Black women face in childbirth, the cortisol and the stress, they talked about culture and them having to have children in a high stress state. Okay, so I just want to revisit that. I wonder, I'm asking this rhetorically, and I'm not piling on, but in terms of stress, I'm thinking what would lead to that stress, and are these married women, and getting back to owning a home as a parallel. Is this something that's supposed to be done? Is this something that was meant to be done by a single person? Childbirth, is this something that was meant to be done, just like owning a home? I mean, if you're rich enough, you can pay the house cash, but were we supposed to buy homes by ourselves? And childbirth, was that something that was meant for two people or just one? Would that lead to a high stress state with increased levels of cortisol?
I would reference in BJ's voice, Dr. Clark's book, Dark Ghettos. And anyone who hasn't read that, I think, that's a good answer for what, Dr. Dunbar just presented. That would be my answer to that. You would see why this, continues to occur in the modern society amongst Black folks. Unfortunately.
Thank you, Salchi. Go, Professor.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Indeed, Allah's all in all. Can you guys hear me pretty clear?
We can hear you pretty clear.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good deal. I appreciate you, Dr. Dunbar, for blessing me to come up and be in you guys' presence. First off, I wanted to make sure I express that to the brothers especially. Here's my position. I am an advocate of reading, and to the best of your ability, gaining some line of understanding of history. I'm an advocate of that. I mean, there's so much in history. Sometimes we can get lost in it. But with that being said, we should strive to do our due diligence and researching what history we can verify. Now, with that being said, I have a deeper question, a below the surface question for the panel as well as for the chat. Now, we're talking about abortion. Now, if we are to speak of the immediate, because people don't like history. In general, people don't like to go back. The first thing it'll be said is, well, that happened in the past. Okay, that's the first thing. All right, so let's go to a deeper question about it. And I relegate this to the U.S. because we're for the most part in the U.S. The U.S. is known for taking care of women and children. All right, can we all agree with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good deal. We're all on board with that. All right. Now, we do know that women have access, and we've seen this numerous times over up to now and perhaps into the future, that women have access to so many resources and help uh, that comes from nonprofits, profits, everywhere. They have all these services. Can we agree with that?
They build special hospitals for them.
That's a
So
fact,
we
man.
can't.
Fact.
So we can agree with that, right? I'm just
Yes.
wanting to
Yes.
make sure we're on the same page here as I continue to walk this down.
Yes.
All right. If
It's
that is a yes, then we have to go and ask the deeper question about this. If she is going to the abortion clinic, and according to the numbers you guys, I'm only using the numbers you guys have presented. If the number is low when it comes to medical challenges, but the luxury is high because you don't want the children, for whatever reason you have. Well, we have to go below the surface because the question was asked why. Well, here's my position, and I would like for you guys to talk about it, and then I'm gonna drop back into the chat and listen. Um, the question would be: is this more about the person that they are having the children with, or meaning, is this more so outright aggression indirectly towards that man that says you aren't worth? I want to make this a mark on the world that you aren't worth having a child for. I'm gonna leave that right there. And thank you for you guys blessing me with your presence. Let me bless be a blessing to your panel, Dr. Dunbar, and I'm gonna drop into the panel, the chat. All right.
Hey, go, Professor.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Before you go, can you restate that? So you said the last part was about a man saying you're not worth bringing a
No.
child.
A woman, when she goes and does that,
Yeah.
is she saying that ultimately I couldn't do this, that, and other to you, but this is what I'm gonna do, the most heinous thing to you that I can, and that's be destructive not only to myself but to your seed.
Yes. The answer to that, before you even leave, Go P, is yes. And I dealt with this personally, right? So we talk about divesting and SYSBM and dating out, right? So I was dating this white girl. She got pregnant, and she was like, and then when it happened, she was like, you know what? This is supposed to be fun. It wasn't supposed to be this. I was like, I don't agree with abortions. Like, me and my family will just take care of it. You know what I mean? She was like, you know what? I can't do it. Because she was like, you know what? Considering we live in the South, this biracial kid may have disproportionate capabilities due to the fact that it has a black dad and a white mom. And she really believed that in her heart of hearts. And she was like, if I have this child, I'm gonna have a child that I don't think is gonna have the best shot at life. And she said that to me. I was like, what the fuck? Like, you fuck, like, but she listed this supposed to be fun, not this. And she did end up having a abortion. I was like, And technically that was her saying, you know what, your black ass baby is not good enough to make it out of my white womb into this life. That is theoretically definitely what was said. And I understood it just for that.
Well, but look. Hold on, Pastor. Look, uh, we can deal. We okay. We're in a position where we have to address what our immediate is, and our immediate is our supposed counterpart. This is about the black man and the black woman, and I'm asking you because according to what Dr. Dunbar read, it says people. He said, women who are non-Hispanic, non-white. If I'm misunderstanding that, non-Hispanic, non-white, meaning black, are the highest, was the highest in having abortion.
That's per capita. Per
Okay,
capita.
whichever you want to say. I'm saying, I'm asking, if we're to address what is in our immediate position or place or community, let's say, I'm only addressing what we're dealing with. Now, the question is, when they get pregnant and they say, oh, because we can't control what they decide. It don't matter what the black man, what the brother says. It doesn't matter. If she says I'm going to have it, she's going to have it. If she says I'm not going to have it, she's not going to have it. Am I correct about that?
Yes, that's true.
Okay, then, if I'm correct about that, and there is a high number of, removing of the child from the, ovaries or whatever, they do, then that would mean that there's a deeper sense of, it couldn't be just, this is just going to be because I'm poor, because this goes back to Salty's position. Hey, they have enough money to do so. They have enough money and resources to do whatever they want to do. Is this more so about the hatred for you? Is the main question.
Yes, I do think there's a very big aspect of that. There is a hatred or definitely a disdain for the man that they procreated with. You will see. Let's talk about in the black community. Even I think across America, women are having sex with men that they seem to have fun with, but they don't desire a life with.
So they don't make the right decisions.
I don't know. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's they make the right decision based off what they want at the time, which is fun, but they don't make the
Then
right
that would not be a right decision if it's based on fun versus what could happen in the longevity of their health and well-being.
You asked if they made the right decision based off what they wanted at the time. That was the right decision. Now,
And you said they was at the right time. It was the right decision because they was having fun. And my follow-up question was, so they made the wrong decision based on fun versus the longevity of their health and well-being.
Yes. In the long term, that was the wrong decision. Yes.
Well,
So
guys,
they think. Go ahead. I was
going to say this is where someone comes in and says, "Well, what's the right decision?" And God doesn't make mistakes, and my child is here because they're supposed to.
That's right. We are in church.
But Dr. Dunbar.
But what I will say is that I think this is what happens when your society becomes more secular, and when you start to take off the traditional safeguards that were there 30 years ago in terms of family, in terms of culture, in terms of what is a family, in terms of what's a good man, what should you be looking for? Should your father be involved? Is there a father around? So I think that's also where this is coming from. I want to read this from Shonda. And I mentioned this earlier because again, in the last election cycle, the perception was this right was taken away. But Shonda, who's in the medical community herself, says, ironically, the national abortion rate went up to 15% last year. I'm not a supporter or advocate of abortions, or as a realist, I know there are some women that will seek to get rid of the pregnancy, but the numbers have gone up since the Dobbs decision. And I think that's not
But
something
once again, Dr. Dunbar,
that was
and the
said
panel,
openly. Go ahead.
once again, this goes back to my original question. Because, on the surface, yeah, they get abortion because of this, that, and other. But if we are to really be realistic with the question and answer about this, we got to go below below the surface and ask the question: well, is this an outright move or display of how much they disdain brothers?
I think it's
And if,
bigger than that though, GOP. I think it's about life. I think it's about, because she brought it from my dealing with it was economics, social status, political status, um, ties to family lineage and family economics was in place. It's bigger than them just shutting your sperm down, even though they accept.
no, Pastor. This is bigger, because they use those arms to pull, those levers to pull, and the aggression towards brothers. If they didn't have this disdain for you, why would they pull the lever? They use those levers to display how much of a hatred they have for you. Now, I'm not saying all of them, but in general, when brothers are subject to anything and everything under the sun, hey, clearly I sound like one who is for brothers, and I'm going to stay on that and stand on that all day. And anybody who goes against that, well, I have to question, why would I even talk to you? So my position is, to ask the question, so we can just put it out there, because it seems to me like many beat around the bush when it comes to this question. I would say, when these levers are being pulled against you, yes, it is a mark or a knock against your position in life. This is a life thing. It's not, no, it's not bigger. No, sir. It is not bigger. My question is bigger.
But what they're saying is, if you, and this is this is what it boiled down to, and this is the argument that Margaret Sanger was making. Her mother had 11 children, 7 miscarriages, and
Pastor, they don't care about Margaret Sanger, sir.
but this is the
They don't.
this
You know
no,
why they don't care? Because they don't read. They don't take time to find out.
but this
I'm
is
trying to tell you that.
but okay, I understand that, but this is what this is the argument. The idea, okay, they may not read it, but the idea was birthed. The idea for them to have these places was birthed from somewhere. And what
Okay.
what they're saying is, I'm not even trying to make their argument because I disagree with it. But what they're saying is, with the amount of children she had and the miscarriages she had and the lifestyle that, I guess you can blame the man, the father created, was not conducive for that large of a family. And her mother, she said, I guess she said her mother wasn't able to eat well. She had to work hard. She miscarried those children. Her body, down to the minerals, down to her calcium, was drained until her heart wouldn't even beat. And she died, went to a demise.
Okay, that was a medical issue, right?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm saying, according to what you guys just put up about percentages, that medical challenge is smaller than the luxury challenge. So I have to stand on the question.
But she was making an economic challenge over a medical challenge,
Okay.
because she said her mother could have had those 18 kids if she would have been in a better economic standing to receive the health care that she should have received for having those children. So if they can't afford it, they shouldn't have them. this is the
Okay,
argument.
so let me ask you. What year are we in?
We're in 2024.
Okay, if we're in 2024, going into 2025, and Margaret Sanger was back in the 40s, 50s. When was that, Dr. Dunbar?
Yeah, that was in the early, that was the early 1900s. She was born in 1879.
Okay, okay, 1930s, 40s, and somewhere in there. Okay, now you guys know math. What is 2025 subtracted from 1930, or 1930 from 2025? What is that?
It's about 90 years.
Oh, ain't
Ballpark.
that something? Now how many people in the days of now are going to go back there, even Google what happened back then versus what they want to do now? We got to speak to reality, brothers.
Well, Go Professor, I think part of what you're talking about is people being more aware and knowledgeable of what's going on in the background of what's going on, and I think we saw that play out in this election. I think that's part of the danger of a place like X, where and places like this where the truth of what is being shared.
Mhm.
But I agree that your average person, young person right now, is their head is in the clouds. They're on TikTok. They're doing other things.
Agreed.
And to your point, Gold Professor, I think what you're getting to is the motivation, particularly amongst Black couples, and why women would opt to have abortions. Yeah, I go back to where we've evolved from in terms of culture and society, and that sex is looked at as pleasure now, and that aspect of finding a woman, determining what are good genes to pass on and whose genes should be passed on, and that whole thought process in large part is non-existent now.
Well, I would say
talking about pleasure and fun, and for the most part.
Well, I would say, because of these recent, especially these recent events, the voting and the all the angst against all that work that was put towards brothers not voting for so and so or voting for so and so, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, it only reinforces my position when I say, hey, I got to rock with brothers, man, because if any brother has any understanding of self, you know that you have been battle tested since the onset of so-called America, and here you are. And if you can't stand on that and represent that swell, then you are the subject to the consequences of your understanding and reasoning and actions. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay, Go Professor, thank you for your insight. Also, thank you for the generous Cash App. I'm gonna hang out for another 15 minutes. I want to get money motion in. I want to read Shonda's comment here. This was in response to Charles Irby. She says, I can't remember because of many years ago in undergrad, we had to watch the video of a live abortion and removal of fetal parts. I never view abortion the same afterwards. Yeah.
My condolences. Good Lord.
Yeah. I did a report my freshman year of college on abortion, and I watched a few myself. So it's like, yeah, in my opinion, when you see how the sausage is made, then reality hits real fast.
I before Money Motion goes, I saw my first images of it were on a metro bus back in Buffalo, and they had some pretty grisly images.
Really?
There.
Wow.
On the back in the day they put the advertisements up there on the and they had some grisly images of abortions, and I said, wow, I never knew that was what that was. And then the other factoid that is not thrown around as much as I guess after women have enough of them, they eventually can't have children. So there's actually a danger to having that procedure done.
So that
Yes.
procedure is called a DNC, a dilation and curettage. It is a surgical procedure that involves widening the cervix and scraping the lining of the uterus to remove tissue.
Yes.
Curettage, a spoon-shaped instrument called a curret, is used to scrape tissue from the lining of the uterus. That's what that procedure, and they have to go back and get him and be checked for bleeding after having a DNC and make sure that they removed everything from the uterus when they did the DNC. So it is a nasty scraping and scrimmaging your uterus. It is nasty.
Okay, Pastor, thank you for that. I didn't know that. Money Motion, what do you want to contribute to this before I wind this down?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Dunbar. This discussion really needs some extra time, so I really appreciate that. With the last contribution with Gold Professor, it seemed that we were definitely, he was hinting around it, but he was actually like focused on one point. But when we're talking about, 90 plus years, and we're talking about like the evolution of thought, so not really thinking about the idea of social engineering. And because of the availability of this option, I think mainly in our community, in the Black community, it's seen more as a release valve. And then when people, especially women, start thinking that, oh, well, I'm judged by the community, and I'm accountable to the community, then it started changing to only God can judge me. And then it changed to, it's like nobody can judge me. I can do what I want. I'm a free person. It seemed it started becoming more of like from a final option or the option of last resort to just another form of birth control in itself. And that really, and when it comes to the viability of going down to the clinic and getting this quote problem fixed, I think it's not really something of a issue of like the hatred of a person or trying to get a dig at the person that they laid down with. It was just more of, well, I can do what I want, no one can judge me, and I'm going to do this no matter, because this is going to be a hindrance upon my life, upon the more hedonistic life where it's more about my pleasure and it's more about what I want to do rather than, oh, well, this is happening. I have responsibility to not just to myself anymore, but to the person that helped me create and the people that are around me that would new human being as part of a family or part of a community. So I was just saying, what do y'all think about that? What's y'all's opinion on that one? Because I think it's more of it's a cap on a hedonistic life if they do bring it to term and bring this person into the world, and it's more of a safety valve to say that, oh, well, I'm just going to get rid of this problem and continue on my life as I wanted to.
Well, I think once again, this is a very eloquent and beautiful example of how culture and society start to impact biology. Because if you don't, this goes back to Thomas Sowell and consequential knowledge. If you don't pass on that whole idea of family and bloodlines and creating another generation, not just to have society go on, but also take care of you when you get older. And then you infuse Meg the Stallion and Glorilla and Sexy Red and City Girls and those kinds of images and that kind of messaging, then you're going to impact the biology, and you're going to impact everybody.
Hold on, Dr. Dunbar. I disagree fundamentally right now with something that Shonda put in the chat. Can you go to her comment that she said that DNC is only for medical indication of miscarriage or incomplete miscarriage? That's not true. If a woman has a child, if a woman has a abortion at, because most states allow abortions up to, that's just why they moved it down to 6 weeks. But before now, a lot of the states were looking at having abortions between 16 and 20 weeks. And when women were having abortions at 10, 12, 16, 20 weeks, they were doing DNCs on them. They were not just giving them a pill, forcing them into labor and contractions and hoping they push the baby out on some toilet. That they were giving that they're giving those pills to women that are anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks. But these women that are 10, 12, 15, and 16 weeks, they have to do a DNC, and they have to come back and make sure that they remove the entire baby. Matter of fact, we know this is because the government Planned Parenthood got in trouble for what were they selling? What were they selling? They were selling baby parts. And how do they get these baby parts? Through DNCs and abortions. DNC used as an abortion in a way that they do abortions. And it was not just for miscarriage or partial miscarriages. It was used it's heavily used in later term abortions. I fundamentally disagree with the fact that it's only used for miscarriages or incomplete miscarriages. That is not true. They use it for late term abortions. The DNC is fundamentally used for late term abortions. I disagree fundamentally.
Okay, so Pastor. So everybody, do your research. Shonda is from the medical community, so I'm not saying what you said is false, Pastor. She is. But everybody, if you're curious about this, if you're undecided, do your research.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, she's a nurse. I could be wrong.
And so am I too. And so am I too. And I know this for a fact.
Okay.
So okay. Thank you for filling that in, Pastor. I didn't recall that you were from the medical community yourself. Okay. So everybody, in this instance, do your research, and if you're interested in this, and I'll probably look it up after we finish. So Money Motion presented a question. I gave my 2 cents, and then Pastor addressed Shonda's comment on DNC. Does anybody want to respond to what Money Motion said? I think he was getting to the impact of culture on biology. Does anyone have anything else to say?
Yeah. Well, the thing is that the social the environment itself has changed throughout time in this country, which allows women to do these types of things. And this is what I would basically said at the beginning of our conversation. The issue that we're having is that when you look at the fact that we are not in an industrial age anymore, and a lot of these women feel entitled to a 1%er lifestyle. That's what's going on. And Green Gorilla has alluded to that and proven that. BGS has proven that. Dr. T has proven that. Dr. Neal has proven that. That's the issue. So a lot of these women, they go to college, and many of them get, easy degrees, and they feel entitled to the top tier men for whatever that means to them. Typically, it's for lifestyle. Okay, because most of the time, women, in the perfect world, of course, a woman would want a guy who they are sexually attracted to, physically attracted to, and the guy makes more than enough money. But let's be real. Most of the women don't have the looks in or, whatever it takes to even be on a less than 1% type of guy's radar. But these women, they go to the college and they feel entitled to a 1% of income lifestyle. And then we're in an environment where it's easy to bail out your poor decisions. So these are the results that we get. Now, mind you, you didn't hear me tell women what to do, what not to do. All I presented is the facts and what typically happens. And this is where we are. Men have created an environment that is very easy. So a lot of people who, let's keep it real, who really wouldn't make it if men didn't make the environment so easy, are out here trying to tell everybody else what to do. But you only have that luxury because men have created that environment for you to do so.
Exactly. Dr. Dunbar, could you please share the screen with me, please? I'm not.
Yeah. So, Pastor, I'm trying to wrap up. What is it before we go?
I'll wrap up. I promise you, I'll wrap it up after this. And I'll be done with it. Right.
Okay.
Dr. Dunbar, I need to step down, but thanks for having me up.
All right, AB, thank you.
I'll be done with it after this, right?
All right.
So this is abortion, a DNC, and if you shut it, I want to share the screen so that people don't think I'm just lying and making this up because they say I tend to do that. I'll be done with it, right? Abortion, a DNC, is one method that can be used when a person chooses to terminate, end a pregnancy. I'm not trying to argue with nobody about what the medical field is already doing. And I see it every day. In immersion, you see it all the time. I'm done with it. I'm not going to argue. Thank you for having me up, Dr. Dunbar.
All right, Pastor. Thank you very much.
You have a blessed one.
I'm going to read Shonda's comment here. She says, I wonder, this gets back to someone from the B1 Brigade who said that if it weren't for all abortions, we'd have 80 million more Black people in the country right now. She says, I wonder, would we be more united or divided as a group of in Black America if those 20 million aborted children had the opportunity to be born and alive? That's a good question. I'm going to quickly throw in something. Someone mentioned epigenetics. This goes back to that. That involves how your environment impacts your DNA. Your DNA gives rise to all of your proteins. And your genes. Your DNA is on your genes. Your genes get passed on from your parents. So this gets back to the verbiage from the article about Black women having higher levels of cortisol and stress hormones when they give their births, which is why their births are can be more complicated. And most vets said epigenetics carries both a positive and negative traits experienced by past generations and are continually passed down through the mother's/father's DNA. And he also said, it is wholly because of unresolved issues, all biological, produced by long-term effects of epigenetics. So epigenetics may play a role in all of this as well. So Salchi and Money Motion, do you have any other comments?
One of the last things I can say is, again, I'm just a facts person, man. I'm a facts. What are the facts? What is the fact? And how are things trending? So, because I live in that world, it's easy for me to put my emotions to the side and just look at what is and, put two and two together, track things. But last thing is, when you look at the amount of men or Black men who actually procreate, the vast majority of Black men in this country do not have children. I'm not talking about a critical mass, which is at 20%. Over 50% of Black men don't have children, while some 70% of Black women have children. So that's why I say I look at the actions of what people do more so than what they say. It's very telling. So I've had conversations where there's been Black women, and I'm talking about They were all college grads, beyond basket weaving type of degrees. And every time I've said that, maybe literally only one understood that. The rest of them, when I say it, they couldn't comprehend what I said. Typically what they would say is, that doesn't make sense. The math doesn't make sense. And I would say, actually it does. The reason why you don't like it is because now women have to be accountable for their actions. You don't like it because the vast majority of women do have children, do procreate, and the vast majority of black men don't. So you cannot blame black men for a lot of your poor decisions because the numbers don't lie. People can lie, but the numbers can't. I mean, the numbers can obviously be massaged, but if you know how to read the numbers, then you can see the truth. It is what it is.
Yeah, so that gets to, this is a science channel, that when you're facts-based, then you have to interpret it. You have to interpret the facts and the numbers.
Yes.
And getting to the what and the why, that tends to get uncomfortable.
Yes.
Because it leads to accountability and it leads to what's actually happening. And it's uncomfortable to talk about what's actually happening and who's responsible for what and what led to these conditions. So
and that's why I say BJS is the last boss. That's why. That's why I say that. Because he's that guy.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Sal.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you do and the way your role in keeping us just a little bit smarter and sharper.
Thank you. Appreciate your channels.
All right. Thank you. Money Motion, thank you for the generous Cash App. Do you have anything else you want to say before I wind this down?
Yes, sir. I'll keep it short. Well, I mean, thank you very much for what you do, because this is stuff that, keeps us smarter and keeps us, keeps the wonder and going behind the surface level questions. It's hard to follow up off of Salchi, but I'm still new to this world, where it's like I've always tried to be analytical and think beyond the first question behind the surface level. And sometimes emotions are still into it, and sometimes it still hits hard. But it is one of those things where if you need to find the answers, or if you want to do the research, you have to be able to understand that your emotions are always going to be part of you, but you got to keep that separate from your analytical thinking, because if it does, those massage numbers, they seem to feel a lot more true when you get your emotions involved into a lot of these things. And so that's why and I guess my message to everybody else would just be, keep it to quote Big Brother Wrench Turner, keep your head on the swivel, keep your powder dry, understand where you are, and read the numbers as they are, not how you want them to be. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Money Motion. I think that's a good transition into my ending here. Money Motion, did you have anything else? Otherwise, I'll drop you down.
Oh, no, I'm going to drop off. Thank you very much.
All right. So that's a good point. So keep in mind the numbers and not what you think they should be. That's science. That's logic. That's mathematics. What do the numbers say? What do the trends say? And I think in the aftermath of Decision 2024, I think a lot of people are grappling with the numbers and what they mean and why they turned out the way they turned out. I'm going to come back to that, but I'm going to read some of your comments here because these are some good comments. Let's see. Will I I'll start with non-swirl zone. He says white women aren't worried about abortion. From Dr. Dunbar's chart, they're having fewer abortions based on their percentage of the population. Well, that you know what, non-swirl zone, that goes back to Decision 2024. One of the big controversies is those white women, they betrayed us. This is online for those of you who aren't online. There are a lot of shrieks and outcries about those white women betrayed us. They voted with their husbands. Okay, they didn't vote for female reproductive rights. But the question I asked in my reaction video to Decision 2024 is, were those married women, and were those women who believed in family? Because those women who believe in family, who already have children and who are in stable marriages, their value systems are completely different from single women who don't have children, or maybe women who decided to have children by themselves without a husband. Okay, so the value systems are very different, and so it makes sense to me that they would vote differently than their counterparts. Michael Ross says, that's misogyny, bro. Willier 3R says, and most of my Black male friends and relatives, even the ones who are married, don't have kids either. Okay. He made the statement that he doesn't have children and has never been married. The Builders Table, Professor says, so the levers are actually being pulled against brothers because of what they won't accept, and it comes to their decisions. Yeah, I mean, it's what Tim Waltz and all of them were saying. It's her choice. Mind your own business. Don't try to be involved with a woman's choice, what she does with her body. So it's at the end of the day, it's her choice. That's the other part of this entire gamish. Charles Irby says, at a family reunion, only a third of the men in my family have children on my paternal side. Okay. A lot of families are looking at this and wondering what's going on. Why is this happening? Non-Swirl Zone says all brothers should at least get one kid in before they leave the planet. Charles Irby says almost all of the millennial men in my family are childless. Okay. So this is bubbling to the surface. Richard Reeves, Professor Scott Galloway, they're looking, and if you think about Decision 2024, the spotlight turned to men on the Democratic side. How can we get more men involved? How do we get the male vote up? Why aren't they voting for us? So there's something happening. Okay. Willier 3R says on the maternal side, it's one male cousin who has 9 sounds like an alpha man. On the maternal side, it's one male cousin who has 9 kids, and that is from a side of 14 uncles and aunts and a lot of Gen X and older millennial cousins. Not too many are having kids. All right. He says, protect yourself at all times to the best of your ability, brothers, physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, as well as financially. Go, Professor. Non-Swirl Zone says, if fewer Black men are having kids, why are there so many single mothers? That gets to the mathematics that Salchi talked about. That chaos, no, chaos, I'm wrapping up. So Non-Swirl Zone says, that's the hope, but Babylon seems to have different narrative for ADOS Black men. Charles Irby says, everyone has a trifling cousin who is a serial baby daddy. He isn't respected by the men in my family. He's the true lame. Non-Swirl Zone says they're sharing Black men. And okay, so this is the mathematics that Salchi was talking about. Slick Rick, that raises further implications. Well, to be fair, that cousin is actually a hard worker. He is an electrician and a programmer who makes at least $100,000 and is married to the mama. So he earned those kids. If I was in the same position, I would have a lot of kids myself. UFO Kamikaze says, Chatter Tyrone has nothing to do with a female's decision to keep or abort an unborn child. Her body, her choice. okay, it's clearly a huge imbalance, and particularly in the Black community. Slick Rick says abortions may not top the issue for many people. It's not for me one way or the other. That was a major observation in the aftermath in terms of the forensics of Decision 2024. How many voters actually resonated with that issue? Chaos, I'll give you 2 minutes, and then I'm going to drop you back down so I can give my closing monologue. What's up?
Damn. You know what? Maybe I should catch the replay. I'll keep it short anyway. Margaret Sanger. You know, Dr. Dunbar, no one really talks about the originator of the deletions of not just Black and brown people, but just in general. She ushered in a genre where, at the point now where we are as existence, they've been always trying to lower down populations, you know, but they never found how to go about it properly. They can't go by it physically, so they had to go by other systematic means. And what Margaret brought out, because she was born, I think, 1883, and she died in the 60s.
She was born in 1879 and died in 1966.
They said she was born in 1883.
Okay.
Yeah. And so she, throughout her life, she always was a proponent, and I'm not sure she got this from some other person she was schooled under, but she might have, to always think of a strategy, how to limit, or what they say, get rid of the so-called weak, feeble, the ones that can, you know, support themselves. Well, instead of taking the military means, let's go the persuasive means. Like tell them, say, you know what, you're not ready for it yet. Give it some time. You know, matter of fact, the pastors will tell you, say, God ordained you not to have this. You know, and remember, in time, if we remember, during the hospitals of that time, even now, they took non-Black people's wounds out without their consent, and they find out years later when they had like certain things, which I didn't know how they got away with, but that's another story. So they find ways to lower population. I think the confusion of all this, Dr. Dunbar, and this confused me, but I see they play games, is do you want to lower the population or not? We have 8 billion now, and a lot of people that chose to have kids don't have kids. The numbers speaks for itself. So if you got to draw resource from outside this soil, you're pulling in from another resource that's eventually at a decline. So it's going to come to the point that, you know, you're trying to control the lifespan of human beings. And by doing that, you have to make sure a certain number of people around the globe falls under a certain birth rate. Once you get to, let's say, under 1, you're going to see the technology come in, like light speed. They have technology, you know that, Dr. Bar. They can't reveal it because it's not political. Is they got to find the right time where the whole population gets at point stagnation. Now let's say we can come in. But come here, they've been working on us for decades.
Yes.
It'll take much. Remember, you're in science, you're in the department. If I ask you personally, does it take a lot of money to get certain things done in regards to innovation and stuff? If someone's paying and controls the purse strings, if I wanted that, I give you this, you can make something happen and keep it under lush. Go. Shh. That's my question.
So the question is, does it take a lot of money?
Yeah, like if someone's paying, like these institutions that, you know, you're professionals and you work in an institution, it don't take much. My question, it don't take a lot of much money if to come up with something, and you have to reveal it to the public. You keep it quiet until eventually the time is right. You get me?
Well, everything costs money when you're talking about science.
Yeah, of course. But they got the most money. Like I said, like remember the military budget. They see, if we look at where the money's going, we know where the innovation is coming from. You get me? But people will never know when we're going to see it. You will see it once there's a certain time. And it's not going to be somebody that's going to throw away like regular technology, like tablets, certain advanced technology that we have in our disposal. Those are all throwaway technology. They average.
Well, they were working on 2G, 3G. They were working on that in the 1980s and the 70s. So
yeah, of course.
Yeah, all this stuff. I agree. All this stuff is there are things they're working on and they're looking at that the general public does not know about, and then it's gonna appear like magic. But
the
what you're saying is it's not magic.
yeah, the movies reveal enough what they do behind closed doors. But that's it.
All right.
Because I have somebody come in and say, you can lower me down. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you,
Chaos.
Yeah.
I'll see you on the YouTube streets. All right. So everyone, so I'm trying to wrap this up. So this was inspired. Sometimes we do technology over here. Sometimes we do science, facts. We do recent developments, and sometimes we do science, history, and culture. This would be science, history, and culture, especially with the election and decision 2024 that just passed. I'm supposed to entertain you guys, so I'll do a little bit of that. We were hit over the head constantly with, you need to support women's reproductive rights. That's entirely what Madam Vice President Harris was running on towards the conclusion of the election. And so I was thinking, where did all this come from? Who started all of this? And I thought, okay, well, Margaret Sanger, let me do something on Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood and eugenics. And so I'm going to wrap this up by saying, the things we're seeing, a lot of these things were planned. A lot of these things were orchestrated, and they were planned and orchestrated for specific reasons. One of her earliest motivations was seeing her mother die. Okay. And then treating women in New York City after she became a nurse in terms of complications with abortions. She also became concerned with overpopulation of the earth, along with people like Paul Ehrlich and Thomas Malthus. And then it looks like she was concerned about eugenics as well. So that's the very, very directed control over who reproduces and who doesn't. And she felt like the quote unquote unfit, should not reproduce. All right, that's it. If you're watching on the playback, let me know what you think in the comments section below. On its own, this is controversial. This will stir people's emotions, but even linked with Decision 2024, this is even more controversial. And some people may want to fight you over this. So use your judgment in terms of engaging with people on discourse regarding this and even Decision 2024. But everyone, enjoy the rest of your weekend. For me, it's a long weekend. If you want to donate something to the channel, my Cash App and PayPal are in the description box. The links to my newsletter and my book project are there as well. So with that, as always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Always try to do your best. Take care, and I will talk to you the next time. Like scientists, continue asking questions. Continue looking for the data, looking for the answers, even when people don't want you to find them, and even when people don't want you to see them. Keep looking and asking. Take care. I will talk to you the next time. Bye-bye.